Denise Roach.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's my great pleasure to rise to take the call for the Greens on this bill. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the member for bringing this bill to the House. I imagine that when Mr Goldsmith was the chair of the Community Services Committee on Auckland City Council and he was working on the Homelessness Action Plan, that this was one of those crucial issues that kept him awake at night. The Electronic Transaction (Contract Formation) Amendment Bill. I imagine he was dreaming of this night and day and his opportunity to bring this bill to this House. The purpose of this bill is to... It's all about postal acceptance and the postal acceptance rule. It has quite a lot of interesting aspects to it. Well, actually not really, but the bill makes clear that the archaic postal acceptance rule does not apply to electronic transactions, meaning that an electronic contract is formed at the time acceptance of the offer is communicated to the offerer, the person who's offering the contract. The main effect of the old postal acceptance rule is that the risk of acceptance being delivered late or lost in the post is placed upon the person who's offering the contract. And if the person who's offering the contract is reluctant to accept that risk, then they can always get a receipt that they've posted it. But nowadays we've moved into modern times where people send things by electronic mechanisms, i.e. the computer. And so I guess this bill is a good thing in that it is trying to bring us up to date with what happens when we send contracts to one another. However, the explanation of the bill says the issue of whether the postal acceptance rule can be extended to electronic communications has not yet been considered by the courts. So although I commend Mr Goldsmith for thinking towards the future, I do kind of worry that maybe there was no great hurry to have this bill introduced. As we know from New Zealand Post, postal use is declining, so it is timely, I guess, to bring this legislation to the House. However, one does have to ask oneself why it's been brought to the bill as a private member's bill which has gone through the ballot, rather than just a government bill which they could just push through. And in fact, it could probably go through as an omnibus bill, because there's going to be very little dispute about it as long as we all get the right bill that we're talking about. But I can only assume that the reason it was put into the ballot was so that it took up some space in what is basically a raffle. A raffle for a member's bill to take up a bit of space so it can get pulled out so somebody else's bill doesn't get pulled out. Now, it's Members' Day tomorrow, so there will be some more bills that may be pulled out of the hat, which is really, really exciting because there are some really good ones in there. There are ones like, for example, the one that I'll be putting in, Charities as Advocates Act, which is to look at the long overdue definition of what charitable purpose means. In the last bill, there were things like the Care of Children, Adoption and Surrogacy Law Reform Amendment Bill. There was Catherine Delahunty's Citizenship Acknowledgement of Te Tiriti o Waitangi Amendment Bill. Mojo Maker's had a good one. Consumers' Right to Know Country of Origin Food Bill. In fact, there was the Copyright Parody and Satire Amendment Bill. There was a raft of bills, sir, that take up a bit of space in the ballot, which is actually a raffle, and I know that I have some issues about gambling, but this is one gamble I'm willing to take because I want my bill to be drawn out. So it leaves me with a sense of dissatisfaction that the member has had his bill pulled out of the ballot when actually it could have just been done more or less overnight. But I commend him. We'll be supporting it. It's fairly inoffensive, and it's nice to have Mr Goldsmith thinking of the future. Just for the record, in case Hansard doesn't pick it up, I've had a huge tone of irony in my voice during this speech. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa.
I call Dennis O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
New Zealand First will support the electronic transactions contract formation